Pierre-Francois Bouchard. What nationality?
I'm going to go Lithuanian.
No. Anyway, I'll tell you his
Is
nationality.
the inventor of the small chocolate?
Bouchard. No.
Ducks?
Pierre-Francois Bouchard
Lithuanian hitman.
wasn't set out to dig. See, he was a smart guy. And he'd studied philosophy and mathematics at college, and he'd made good choices in the early years of the French Revolution. He joined the...
That could mean many things.
It really could. It really could. He joined the revolution as a sergeant major in the Grenadiers de Paris.
Oh, yeah.
The Grenadiers of Paris. He fought in Champagne and Belgium as one of the famous soldiers of Year 2.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, it was good.
Them.
I do like the idea of the Battle of Champagne. Anyway.
But famous soldiers of Year 2? Should I know that?
Not the topic of this podcast, but early in the French Revolution, they decided that the shitty years that were named after Jesus weren't good enough for them. They wanted New Year's.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know when Year 2 is. I think Year 2 translates to maybe
after Year 1.
1793, maybe something like that.
That would have been my guess.
But don't worry about that. Not the topic. I'll do that for you one day.
Thank you.
Anyway. In 1794, because he was doing so well in the French Revolution, he was sent to the brand new and awesome École Nationale d'Aérostatique.
Yeah,
at the
static
Chateau-
electricity on planes.
No, not static electricity, at the Chateau Moudon.
Oh, so non-moving planes.
Non-moving planes, yes.
This is a plane but doesn't do anything yet.
He was made there Lieutenant des Aérostiers, which this means he is a lieutenant of Napoleon's balloon air force.
Fuck yes.
I know. I just.
Also, I'd like to pause to compliment you on your flawless accent.
Aérostiers.
Des Louise Mon.
Well, anyway, he was teaching maths to the
balloonanauts.
To the balloonanauts, and I think he did some balloonauting himself.
You have to.
As we have mentioned before, balloons were cool in the French Revolution. Anyway, one day,
Balloons and
unfortunately,
guillotines.
yeah, balloons and guillotines. One day, unfortunately, while working on an experiment, Pierre-Francois Bouchard, a hydrogen gas flask exploded, and his right eye was badly damaged. Even worse, or perhaps even better, I don't quite know.
Yeah.
His boss was also working on the experiment, and he actually lost his eye, but he never held it against Bouchard. He was like, "No,
Because he couldn't find it. I'm sorry.
And as a reward, although this seemed to end his career as a balloonaut,
The boss, or Pierre Bouchard.
the boss doesn't turn up again, so let's not worry about the boss.
Bye, boss. Alrighty.
Bouchard is no longer an aérostier.
That sounds like someone who cooks potatoes. That will be your aérostier.
Instead, he was sent to the École Polytechnique, and it was there that Bouchard learned a very different art, not the art of ballooning, but the art of fortification.
Ooh.
And with these skills under his belt, not long later, Bouchard joined Napoleon's Egyptian expeditionary force.
I was going to say Egyptian experience. We call this the Egyptian experience. You will love it.
Come with me. Yeah, of course.
Exotic dates. All descriptions.
All right, Bouchard joined Napoleon's Egyptian experience.
Yes.
On landing in Egypt, Bouchard was tasked straight away with rebuilding an old Mameluke fort that Napoleon had renamed Fort Julien.
Of course.
And then, on about the 15th of July, 1719, Bouchard
So
spotted...
year 3-ish.
I think we said... Yeah, it's probably about year 8 or something.
Year 8?
Year 8.
Yep.
Bouchard spotted something odd in a hole his soldiers had been digging. Welcome to the Wholesome Show.
Thanks.
Science stories
Oh.
of people who sit up the back of the classroom bus.
Who ask
Who?
dumb questions. The science stories.
The
Ask
who
dumb
does.
questions. The science people, students people.
Okay.
Up at the back of the class.
The Wholesome Show story is me, Will Grant.
And me, Dr. Roderick Griffin, static electricity.
Static electricity.
Lamberts.
The Wholesome Show is brought to you by the Australian national centre for the...
Awareness of balloons.
So should be.
Yeah, look,
So
a
should
balloon.
be.
Job done.
It's not a hard task. It's not a hard task.
Well, awareness is, tricky to measure.
As I did for you ages ago. Balloons are awesome. Balloons are cool. It's wild, but
Or the old times were when they thought they were aliens and devils and tried to eat each other.
or could take you to the moon, as I also told you. But
Christ, that'd be a cold trip.
today ain't no balloon. Today ain't no balloon story.
Today
Balloons.
we're fortifying, right?
Bouchard, because Bouchard lost his eye or lost most of his eye. Something else figures.
Most like the middle bit.
What?
Which I'm always intrigued by partial eye injury. So do you get half a hemifield? Do you get a hole in the middle like macular degeneration?
Yes.
All of those.
Yeah, that's what happens. Any explosion,
Macularly degenerated hemifield.
you just see explosions in one eye forevermore.
That's exciting.
It's like you burn it in on the TV.
How long does it take you
if
to
leave
stop
an
going,
image-
did you see that? Oh my God, there's another one.
The formal writing system of the ancient Egyptians, what we know as hieroglyphics,
Hieroglyphico.
was full of awesome pictures of birds and snakes and things like that. It is without doubt the coolest looking writing
And
system.
people who do
known to
that with their hands.
I love that. I mean, if you ever look at some hieroglyphics, you're like, damn, that is cool writing. Our writing is lame and functional. Their writing is awesome looking, not so functional.
So, but walking like that, after the famous song Walk Like an Egyptian, my question is, are you allowed to sing and like that song anymore, or is it considered racial?
That's an interesting question.
Would you like to take that on notice?
I'll take it on notice.
We'll talk about it next week.
I think
Were the Bangles racial?
If the Bangles had said "walk like an Egyptian" in hieroglyphics, that might have been okay.
But Walk Like an Egyptian, it's like, you jerks.
Yeah, no, Egyptians walk normally. They're normal people.
Have you been there?
No, I haven't.
So you don't know?
I don't. Anyway, hieroglyphics, the formal system of writing that the Egyptians used, the ancient Egyptians used, developed about 5,500 years ago under the pre-dynastic ruler Scorpion the First.
Oh, God, yes.
I know. If you're choosing your king name,
Scorpion. I am definitely, okay, I'm on the way home. I'm going to get home and go, sweetheart, surprise, I've changed my name.
I know that ancient Egyptians had some cool names. There's Cleopatra and there's Ramses and Cheops and
whatever. Scorpion. I'm Scorpion. Oh God! And then you've got a hieroglyphic immediately for it.
You do.
And
you
the
do.
chest tat.
Yeah.
/ face tat.
Maybe he invented the whole system of writing. He's just like, I love scorpions so much. Let's have a whole system of writing there.
Except
Maybe.
as I understand it, like 2 cats, a block of wood, and someone walking strangely means like go and fetch milk.
Well,
I don't think it was that literal.
Well, yeah. So that's kind of the big question I want to talk about. So as a writing system, hieroglyphics lasted for maybe about 4,000 years. I don't know if...
Seriously, that long?
Yeah. Look,
Jesus.
obviously it was a very early writing system, so it's had a the Roman system that we use. Are we called Roman?
The Cyrillic.
Cyrillic? No, Cyrillic's like Greek and Russian.
It's like your accent.
Anyway, ours is not that old.
No.
We might keep using it for another few thousand years, but hieroglyphics did last quite a long time.
That is a long time.
So yeah, started under Scorpion the First, and then it lasted under all of the pharaohs, under Persian rule in the 6th and 5th centuries BCE, and under the Greeks and Roman rules later. But by that sort of time, it's starting to wane in popularity. So it's mainly just the priests using it towards the end, except maybe it seems like it might have been used as a way to tell the true Egyptians from the foreign invaders.
Of course.
Like it's a little bit like fuck off, we're full sort of thing.
Yeah.
You write it in hieroglyphics.
This says there's a catapult, 2 dogs, and a ship.
Yes, that means
fuck off, we're full.
fuck off, Romans go home.
Yep.
I think. But by the year 394, which is actually, when you consider that it started 5,500 years.
Recent.
394 is totally recent.
Yep.
It's 1,500 years ago.
Yep.
Egypt was converting to Christianity, and hieroglyphics was a dead language. So the last known example of hieroglyphics is the graffito of Esmet Akom.
You don't have to tell me.
Which I gotta read at least the start of this.
Are you going to read it in hieroglyphics?
Well, all right. I'll read out the pronunciation. I'll try.
Bird, cat, pyramids, rock.
No, well, okay. So the written version is this. Really, to me, looks like cock and balls with a coat hanger through it. Lion, eye, swirl, egg, bird, and then the only thing I can say that's a dildo. then a snake, then a set of stairs and some other things.
Can I just verify the cock and balls with the coat hanger through it?
Look, if you zoom in on this one, like it's definitely.
Oh yeah, or an upside down pipe with a leak that's blowing water through the top.
Yes, that's true, but that's a cock and balls. Like that's a.
Oh, it is. I was looking at it backwards. Yeah, that's a cock and balls. It's been pinned to as like a specimen box. That's what I'm seeing. Like, and this one I collected in the what do you call it? The Riviera.
And I'll read it in what is thought to be pronunciation, but unfortunately, I don't know how much this came from the source that I got. But there's a lot of letters that I don't know, like
accent type,
like asterisks. But it could be
that's a swear word.
Mbuh, mwr, shrm, m equals f, istmd him sir.
Yep. Yeah, no, don't give up. Do you want to try?
Yeah, there you go. You try that bit.
Me words. Batiga shitbum.
It didn't say that.
Asterisk means
it
swear
didn't
word.
say that. See, I put it.
Asterisk means shitbum.
Shitbum. Or in English. So this is the last written thing in hieroglyphics. Before Mandulus, son of Horus, by the hand of Esmet Akom, so by the hand of, it's me writing this, son of Esmet, the second priest of Isis, for all time and eternity, words spoken by Mandulus, lord of the Abaton, great god. Great god.
That's graffiti?
Yeah.
That's shit graffiti. Like when you're driving past, you don't have time to absorb all that.
I'm really enjoying around Kaleen, where one lives. There's a whole bunch of like drawings of this slug dude. That's what the kids call him.
Turtle head.
Yeah, little turtle head, slug dude. This guy's going right.
By the hand of, for the first time in reverse, I have with another famous name. Like, what is it actually saying? This is.
I wrote this.
Keith is good.
I think basically he wrote this. For all time and eternity. Before Mandulus, son of Horus, by the hand of Esmet Akom, son of Esmet, the second priest of Isis, for all time and eternity. Words spoken by Mandulus, lord of the Abaton, great god. And then he drew like a dude standing next to it. So I think he was just saying, I wrote this and...
I existed.
Look, and I don't know if he died straight after and how long it took him to write this hieroglyphics.
I assume it was chiseled.
Yeah, definitely chiseled. So it took a little while. Yeah. And so let's say he might have actually been a last hangover of knowledge of hieroglyphics, and maybe he was just testing his hand. He was like, okay, I want to preserve. Maybe it's 20 years after anyone else has done it.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I think I still have enough knowledge that I can get this out. And but anyway, after that, all knowledge of hieroglyphics was lost. So they sort of faded into myth at this point. So people obviously saw them. Yeah. They were still on places all around Egypt and surrounding areas a little bit. But people lost the ability to read them or to write them, and they became a bit of a myth. Like the Greeks and the Romans started imagining that they were, maybe it's magical language. Like it doesn't.
Of course it's magical.
Oh, we still hold that. Like,
of course.
Like, I mean, it looks magical.
I've seen The Mummy. And the Scorpion King. Coincidence? I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. There's no stories about movies about ancient Egypt that are just like bureaucratic adventures.
Yeah, we built a house, and the
love stories in ancient Egypt.
Yeah, there aren't. Are there?
I can't think of any.
I mean, I'm thinking of all the romance novels I do read.
Well, the beginning of The Mummy, where
Imhotep.
Yeah, there's some sort of romance between
Anak Sulaman.
Yeah.
That's the name. Anak Suleiman and Imhotep.
But that starts with a love story. Sure. I don't think it's a nice love story. But that idea that it's a mystical, magical language still hold a lot of...
Just the idea that it could disappear. Like you could have it around you all the time and people... I know I think it's right. I know what it means.
Well, there's probably pretty solid reasons that that Greek was a fantastically easy language to learn comparatively.
Because phonetically it represented sounds rather than weird pictograms.
Yes. So you can imagine that all around, obviously Greek and then Roman in the other part of the Mediterranean, but all around the area, people are just like, oh, you can just learn Greek just by listening to the sounds and not learn about the birds and the snake and the...
That does not symbolically mean anything. It just means
like... I'll come to this in a different in a little bit, but the writing system representing ideas so much more complicated to learn, so much more complicated to write down than sounds. Sounds in writing is actually a huge invention, and it was a big thing. So it was probably.
is.
I mean, ancient Egypt converted to Christianity under the Roman Empire, so that had a big part. But I think it was probably more. It just got easier to do Greek.
It just is. I sat through trying to learn Japanese, the kanji. I mean, the two other systems, they're just phonetic, but the kanji. And so this guy, Lex, was awesome. But he would stand
So
there.
the kanji is the
actual
pictographic,
the ideograms, or whatever,
Yep,
and
yep.
so they took from Chinese, and so he put up a thing and go. So you can probably see this looks like a hovercraft with the back open,
Yep.
and there's this field of wheat in just to the side,
Yes.
under a shining moon, and I'm looking at that going, I can't see any of that, and that would obviously mean I'm like, I don't know, I'm fat, like I had no idea, and he really meant, and he knew this. And he could see all these images. I'm like, I can't even see the images, better yet interpret them.
I remember someone was telling me a story, and I don't know if it was in Japan or China, but again, it was with the kanji, where someone who was ethnically Japanese or Chinese, but had spent a fair bit of his time growing up in America or Australia or something like that. Yeah. So his knowledge was, he'd gone back to Japan and then had lived in there for a long time, but his knowledge of reading kanji was still, not quite there, and he felt really quite ashamed that he didn't have this list of 8,000. He only knew 6,000 out of them. And it's just, it's an amazing achievement to do it, but
it's hard. Work. It's so arbitrary. So
we lost all knowledge, but there were some people who claimed. There were some people who were like, "Yeah, I know how to do it." Plutarch, in the 1st century AD, he said there's 25 Egyptian letters, but I don't know what they mean.
They definitely exist.
Definitely,
and there's
there.
25. I'm Plutarch.
Plotinus, in the 3rd century, claimed that hieroglyphics didn't represent words, but a divinely inspired fundamental insight into the nature of the objects that they depicted.
Obviously.
So he's saying, that this is something actually to do with the snakes that they're showing.
Freaking magical and shit, dude. Plotinus, too. What a beautiful name.
Plotinus.
It's just delightful. It's smooth and delicious.
Probably the most extensive ancient work was the Hieroglyphica, written by a dude called Horopolo. Horopolo, yes. So Horopolo in there discussed the meaning of individual hieroglyphs, though not how those signs were used to form phrases or sentences. So he would say something like, the owl means...
Cat. Here's a field of wheat. That means cart.
Well, one of the...
or husband.
But he was... it's turned out he did get some of the meanings right.
Well, if you try hard enough, you're going to get some random hits.
But most of them wrong. There are, I don't have the exact numbers. I think there are 800, 900 hieroglyphic letters.
Wow.
Don't quote me on that one. It's.
Oh, I'm going to quote you.
But he got some right. So, for instance, he says the picture of a goose means
trapezoid.
No, it doesn't. It means sun.
Goose means son. So not son, as in the male child?
The male child, yes. Your male child, you represent by goose.
They often are a bit of a goose.
Oh, they are, it's true. But he said it was because geese love their children an awful lot.
Just their male ones.
But it's more because we found out now that the goose hieroglyph is the sound it makes. Goose sounds like sun. So...
Doesn't sound like sun.
There are a couple of Arab scholars called Jabir ibn Hayyan and Ayub ibn Masalam, who both said they understood hieroglyphics. Now, I don't know if they said and wrote it down, or they said and their works have been lost.
They
or they
said
never
at the pub. Oh yeah, I can read that. Totally.
And I got a girlfriend in Canada.
She sends me letters in hieroglyphics.
So they claimed, but that's never been tested. Perhaps the most famous of the early attempts to understand hieroglyphics was a German Jesuit scholar called Athanasius Kircher.
Oh yeah!
Now Kircher wrote Lingua Egyptica Restitutia.
I've read that in the original
Latin.
Lingua.
Latin.
Yeah.
He said, hieroglyphics, this language hitherto unknown in Europe, in which there are as many pictures as letters, as many riddles as sounds, in short, as many mazes to be escaped from as mountains to be climbed. And then he went and published 4 volumes of basically, I reckon. So what what he would do is take hieroglyphic scripts. So people had drawn them, and they'd gone around Europe a little bit, like in some of the libraries and things like that. People would take like a rubbing or something like that.
Put the paper. Yep.
Yeah. So there were some around in libraries that you could find, and he did translations where there's a good one. So a simple hieroglyphic text now known to read Didwzer, so something that short, which we know means Osiris says. He translated it as, and I'm trying to imagine. I don't have the actual original hieroglyphics, but I'm imagining the pictures here. The treachery of Typhon ends at the throne of Isis. The moisture of nature is guarded by the vigilance of Anubis.
Fuck me, and that's
that was it. Yeah,
according to him.
Didwzer.
Really? How do you get moisture in there?
Yeah.
I mean, you got the Osiris part.
Well, okay, look, there was certainly, and here's the thing we'll come to in a little bit. There were sometimes the pictograms, the hieroglyphs themselves, would sometimes be sounds and would sometimes be a concept. And so that was that's the tricky thing. That's the tricky thing. It's not a completely one or the other language. Is it a noun, a
preposition? Is it a blend of two?
There you go.
This means to the tennis, that means from the tennis.
He also said that hieroglyphics was the language spoken by Adam and Eve.
Obviously.
That a dude named Hermes Trismegistus was Moses, and that they're occult symbols which cannot be translated by words, but expressed only by marks, characters, and figures, which is weird because then he did try and translate them.
And also they are marks, characters, and figures.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But he did say cannot be translated, and then he's like, except for by me.
When I do it.
And when I do it, I get it right.
Here's my 4 volumes of meh.
So people have later said nothing he did even remotely fitted the original text.
That's unfair. Osiris was in the original.
Okay.
And in his 900-word translation of Osiris says, wasn't that it?
Yeah, Osiris says.
Thus spake Osiris.
The famed, I might be famed, I don't know, Egyptologist, Sir A.E. Wallace Budge. Which is such an Egyptologist,
isn't
name.
it?
He said
he sleeps in a suit too. You know that guy, a pith helmet and a suit.
Oh, no, I think it's a pajama suit. Like it's definitely.
No, I'm thinking linen.
You have your daytime suit, your dinner suit, and your pajama suit.
And your linen sleeping suit. Definitely with a full tie.
Many writers have pretended to have found the key to hieroglyphics, and many more professed, with a shameless impudence which is hard to understand in these days, to translate the contents of the text into a modern tongue. Foremost among such pretenders must be mentioned Athenaeus Kircher, who in the 17th century declared he had found the key to the hieroglyphic inscriptions. The translation which he prints in Oedipus Egypticus are utter nonsense, but they were put forth in a learned tongue. Many people at the time believed they were correct. So
he's a good bullshitter.
Yeah. So, look, there were people that were trying. I don't think Kircher wasn't trying, but there was huge debates. Like the big debate, obviously, is are they phonetic? So is it representing some sort of sound? Does the owl mean
owl? Or does it mean just an owl?
Something like that.
No. That's, you know how animal sounds don't translate across languages too. You know, like in English a cow goes moo, but in French a cow goes or something like this. Like it's always weird. Yeah, kava, kava. That's not quack.
No, I get that. So
it's the same problem.
Oh, I got to look that up. What noise does a snake make in other languages?
It's pretty obvious. But so they had to work out whether was it phonetic, was it an idea, or was it actually an owl means an owl?
Totally. It's unlikely that an owl means an owl because
that'd be too easy.
I think there's not much point in writing down a sentence where it's like, all right, so
have you got 10 owls? You got to picture 10 owls.
Well, it's just like if you're representing actually the thing that happened. Okay, so first I got my cock and balls caught in a coat hanger. Then there was a lion, and I gave him some side eye, and an owl laid an egg near a dildo, and then there was a snake coming down the stairs. Like
because it hated dildos and was not keen on the lion either.
And then my mate was sitting like this.
And it really doesn't give you a lot for, like what's and look like?
Exactly.
And and's a pretty popular word in a lot of languages. Yeah. Anyway.
So there was a big debate. There was a big debate, and they didn't have a lot of information on there. So at this point, a lot of people actually thought this is almost going to be impossible to translate, partly because we've lost their religion as well. So most of the remaining texts were all in the temples.
Of course.
And they're like, okay, it probably means something pretty religio.
I think this one means God. That one means more God.
But they didn't actually have much of an idea of the ancient Egyptian religion either.
Doesn't make it hard when you don't know what they're writing about.
Well, that's it. Yeah. I mean, if you've found some writing right next to like 4 pots, and in each pot is
or
like
a stereo,
different amount of grain.
You're like, okay, this is instructions for the stereo.
Exactly.
But when you're like, this is a temple and that's it.
Yeah.
Temple to what? Gods?
Being nice.
Yeah, like spiritual.
So the fact remains that by the late 18th century, it was a 1500 year or a little bit more because,
give or take.
Dead language. So, 1798, Napoleon proposed to his mates in the French Revolution that they needed to seize Egypt. He wrote a letter to the Directory, which there was 3 of them, I think, that shared command for a little while.
Oh.
Napoleon became the boss guy a little bit later, but he said, look, fellas, what we should do is we should take over Egypt, and that'll protect French trade interests, attack British commerce, and undermine Britain's access to India and the East Indies, which is weird because Egypt, there was no Suez Canal at this point.
Yeah, like that seems... interesting.
Suez Canal did come a little bit later. So, but anyway, he also said, okay, what we could do is we could make a port on both sides, and we could sort of have a little train line or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
He also said somehow connecting up with Egypt would connect up with his buddies in India, and that would help the war effort somehow. Anyway, he said, let's go do this, and they did. They invaded Egypt, and
well, Egypt deserved it. Had it coming.
Now, Napoleon didn't do super well in this campaign, but that's not the story.
No, it was too hot.
Moscow was too cold. I don't know if Egypt was too hot. They definitely got beaten.
Definitely hotter than Moscow, though.
But the thing that he did do is he brought along 176 technical experts.
Wow.
Now, the formal language that they called them is the Commission des Sciences et des Arts.
Norse.
Yeah, or they called them savants. Like they just let's bring 176 savants. And
careful, they're very particular.
They I know, they all remembered the phone book. And these guys, I assume they're all guys. I don't have all their lists, but I don't know. Let's just go with that. They fell in love with Egypt, and then there's
all of them.
Yeah, they did. They were like, this place is wild. It's got everything. And then there was this, they started sending stuff back to France and to the rest of Europe. And then there's this burst of Egyptomania throughout France. So all throughout France, there's Egyptian desserts, Egyptian furniture, Egyptian designs on advertising.
Egyptian hats.
Probably. They sent back en masse heaps and heaps of mummies.
Yeah.
And they had these mummy unwrapping parties. I couldn't. They were huge in Victorian England. Oh. I think maybe they had them in France and America as well.
What a weird thing to do.
Oh yeah,
This is probably at a time too when some of those parties would involve a bubbling cauldron of hash at the doorway. So you'd walk in.
God damn!
Literally, and you have a huge scoop of hash before you as you walk in.
And they're like, "Okay, we're going to unwrap an ancient corpse."
Yeah, it's surrounded by mystical writings. It's going to be fun.
Oh my god! So so these mummy unwrapping parties. This doesn't tell us much about hieroglyphics, but anyway, I was enjoying this. They bring out the mummified body of an ancient Egyptian, and just a warning that well, not to us, but to them, at some point, people were faking ancient mummies and sending that back to France. Like people in Cairo and places like that were like, oh, they want to buy these things. Let's grab a dead body off the street and make a fake mummy.
Or make a dead body and make a fake mummy.
They were also, at this time, some people using mummies for medicine.
What?
Well, there's 2 theories going on. One was that like treats like, and so what this theory, a long way pre, it's a little bit homeopathic.
Yeah.
But if you have a headache, the thing that will help with a headache is a bit of ground up skull, and so you dribble a bit of ground up skull in your water. A great place to get skull is from some mummies.
Yeah.
And then drink that. But they also did think mummies in particular had healing powers, like because of some of the chemicals that the mummification process.
The embalming fluids were a tonic.
Bitumen.
It certainly would cure you of some things. You should put it on his eye.
Anyway, so the most famous mummy unwrapper was Thomas Mummy Pettigrew. He was a surgeon turned antiquarian, and he held parties all throughout Victorian England where he'd bring along a mummy. And he'd...
you've got to go to one of these. It's just excellent.
Wouldn't you? I'd go to one.
Oh, I don't know.
I'd go to one.
I want to know what else they're doing. If it's literally all standing around with, one cheap
Is there
cocktail.
Good music? Is there good music?
Is there the bubbling cauldron of hash?
Who else is going to be there?
Yeah, well, it's true, because what are we going to do? We're going to unwrap a corpse.
All right. So they did do something more. Thomas Mummy Pettigrew, he spent a lot of time at the parties. Once he'd unwrap them, then he'd measure their skulls to work out if they were black or if they were Caucasian.
Oh, he didn't tell me they were measuring shit.
Because
now it's a party.
Yeah, and measuring shit to prove racism. Like okay,
it's getting more interesting. This skull's clearly white.
Anyway, they were very much of the belief that pharaohs had to be white, because
like all Egyptians were.
Indeed, they very much
pristinely Caucasian.
There's a little chart here. This is the types of mankind that they talked about. There's the red, the yellow, the black, and the white.
I see.
Yeah, so the pharaohs were white and had this awesome hat on. Anyway,
well, that's proof positive.
Pierre-Francois Bouchard knew at once that the stone at the bottom of the hole was important. So it's a little over a metre tall. I think it was lying down.
So a metre long.
Yes. Well, okay, and then 3/4 of a metre wide. So it's a metre wide and a quarter, 3/4 of a metre wide.
Yeah.
Covered in writing in 3 different scripts. So one of them he knew was hieroglyphics. The other he knew was Greek. So
I know what the third one is, I think.
He called over his boss, and at once they both knew it was super important. And so then they called over their boss, the General Jacques Francois Menu, who happened to be in Rosetta at the time. The newly announced find was announced to Napoleon's scientific association, the Savants, and they rightly suggested that there was 3 inscriptions of the same text. That was the key thing. It wasn't just 3.
How awesome is that?
I know. Oh, look. I still think the Rosetta Stone is just one of those so talismanic object. It just looks so cool.
And it proves the Earth is flat. Because it can't be a coincidence. It must have been divine intervention also that people were created 12,000 years ago. It can't be an accident.
Really? It can't? It couldn't just be that humans wrote this down and decided to write it in 3 scripts?
This could be handy for people.
I love. So the final line, they translated the Greek pretty quickly. There were people that spoke Greek, and that ancient Greek was a bit different, but not super different from modern Greek. So it was a readable text. The last lines of the Greek text called for copies of the decree. That's what it was. Like it was a decree announcing something to be inscribed in sacred and native and Greek characters and set up in all of Egypt's major temples. So it's basically saying, this now that you've read this, copy it and put it in these 3 different languages.
So diversity. So everyone should be able to understand this.
But what it's saying is that the 3 different texts are literally the same thing. It's saying like that you've put it even in the instructions. That this is going to allow you to translate hieroglyphics. And so people are like, this is just wild straight away.
It's weird to me then that there weren't. Unless you can tell me there were heaps of these discovered then.
That's the interesting thing. There's very few. There are some other examples, and there's certainly tiny examples of things like...
Rosetta Shard.
Well, yeah, shard type things that have multiple languages in them. And there's...
Same announcement,
there's another one that's like Greek and Persian, or there's like cuneiform and Persian. But very few have so much text. Like this actually has quite a lot of text. I'll come to some of it later.
Yeah.
But the amount it's a sort of 1,000-word decree sort of thing.
God.
Whereas a lot of the others, it's like they've written the Emperor Xerxes or something like that in 2 different scripts, and it's not enough to really get an understanding of what the language is doing.
Although Xerxes is a very handy name, it comes up a lot.
I know, but it's also and the X's stand out. It's
a little bit.
Is that it? No, look, and it's weird that there aren't more of them, but maybe there are. Maybe they're buried in the sands or something like that.
Or they've been kept by someone.
Well, I can imagine ancient emperors needed to say things in multiple languages.
Sure.
Anyway, Napoleon himself had a look at it, and he was like, yes, this is awesome. It was called by then La Pierre de Rosette, or the Rosetta Stone. And then he went back to France. Now they reported it, and pretty quickly everyone in Europe is like, this is wild. The first thing they decided to do, it's still in Egypt at this point, is they said, okay, we want to make some copies of this so that people can start studying it back in Europe without moving it and having to study the original.
So they took it to Officeworks and they said, we don't do concrete.
Well, there's the famed artist and inventor Nicolas Jacques Conte found a way to use the stone itself as a printing block to reproduce the inscription.
Is that a good idea? You ink it up, you put it in a thing, you go slam. So, bit of a problem. There's a small crack.
Look, you don't have to slam. Surely you could layer a bit of ink on this and put a piece of paper on it, take it off.
Some fuckwit is just not
I don't
gonna
know
care.
if you need to be a famed inventor to work out how to copy this.
Like smush ink on something. And then,
I think in like grade 2 where you're like doing your archaeology and you put the paper over it and you do the rubbing. You're like, God damn, look at me. I'm a friggin' archaeologist.
But maybe he invented other things.
Maybe he did. Maybe
This
he
might
did.
not have been his only achievement.
Okay. Maybe he invented the ancient stone slab photocopier.
Yep.
Which sounds like a great achievement.
Yep.
They went all around Europe, and that's what people began to study. Now, the French eventually lost in Egypt, and as part of the surrender, the British said, "Okay, and we want the stone." But weirdly, there's a little bit where the General Jacques Francois Menot, he tried to run off with the stone after the surrender. Not
How
quite.
heavy is it?
Oh no, it's a ton or something like that.
Okay, not literally.
You're not running off. No, it's quite a heavy object. I think roughly a ton.
Jesus, okay.
But yeah, no, it was the surrender and the bug out bit. So all the French were packing up, and this English guy named Edward Daniel Clark had taken some students around the back streets behind General Menot's residence and found the stone hidden in like a luggage cart under some carpets. So he had it covered in some carpets, and then they took it back. And then,
Wait a minute. Give me a hand, chaps. I didn't realize it was that big. That's or that.
Have you seen it?
No.
I look. I think I saw it. It's in the British Museum. I saw it as a 6 or 7 year old, and I was blown away. I was like, "This is so cool."
That's why he became an intellectual.
I know, but there was also they'd made a version that looks pretty much identical. Like it doesn't look like a plaster cast or something like that. It looks very identical, but you're allowed to touch it. And I know it's not the real thing, but you can feel the carving into the rock.
The idea's there.
But there you go. So everyone knew that the Rosetta Stone, these 3 languages written together, was the key to understanding hieroglyphics. But translating it was not an easy thing to do.
Right.
So, who tried? So first of all, Antoine Isaac Sylvestre de Sacy. He was a French linguist.
Was he?
He was,
French, huh?
French, I know.
Hard to believe.
I hate to say it, but nearly all French. Not all French, but nearly all French who dived in on this. He was the first to work on the stone, but he didn't work on the hieroglyphics. He worked on the middle one. It's called the Demotic script.
Demotic. All right.
Based on Plutarch, he assumed this script had 25 phonetic signs.
Good start. Yeah, Plutarch.
But then he figured out within there that he tried to work if there was anything phonetic, but all he could work out from the Greek is there was a couple of rulers' names. There was like Ptolemy and Alexander, but beyond that he couldn't work out much more. He realized that there were far more than 25 signs. So
it shouldn't be hard to realize that with this source.
I would have thought that you could do. You don't have to be no archaeologist linguist to just count them up.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 26.
And then he gave up. It was like, it's too much. If it was 25, I would keep going.
This is like 30.
Next person to have a go.
Yeah.
Johan David Ackerbland, Swedish diplomat and amateur linguist.
And non-French.
He had a bit more success. He analysed the same sign groups as de Sacy, and he identified more of them correctly. He said that there's an alphabet of 29 signs, 29 demotic signs. So this is not the hieroglyphics yet.
No.
Half of which he got right. But de Sacy, the original guy, he was skeptical, and so Ackerblad said, all right.
I can't do it, so you can't either. Sweet.
Next came the 2 people who actually made the big dint in it. And this is actually taking quite some time. This is not we've got it, we can just read this.
Yeah.
It's so the first one was the British polymath, Thomas Young.
Oh.
He started diving into this in like 1811 or something like that. And the first thing that he started to do was going a bit mathematical. So he would look for sections in the Greek text that were sort of repeated over and over again, like either letters or key words. It's like looking for the word "the." If you were to translate from English, you can find the word "the" a certain a percentage of time.
Yep.
Similarly, you can actually even do that with letters, but words are probably a better thing for translation.
Particularly if you're dealing with these symbolic things and you're not sure yet.
And so he was thinking, okay, so should there be a similar proportion in the demotic bit and in the hieroglyphics bit? It's a good idea,
mate, but there's no reason to think it would be.
It's a good idea, but they're not exact translations in the sense that it's word for word. Languages
they differ.
They don't work like that.
They differ.
They don't work like that.
Some are more differ than others.
But Young did realize that there were too few hieroglyphs for each one to represent a word, which is what you would think if it's purely idio, what do you call it?
Idiotic.
Ideographic.
Yeah.
If it was purely that, like one ideogram to mean one word, then you'd need a whole lot.
Quite a few.
I don't know.
More than 25.
Well, yeah, probably more. And there was just not enough of those.
No, that's a big deal. Even realizing that is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So it suggests, okay, you have to reuse these again to mean something different. So owl might mean owl, but then other times owl has to mean
owl with a snake means
ox cart
badger
or something like that. Yeah. But working out how that works is the big thing. He also noticed that there were similarities between the hieroglyphics and the Demotic, which is the text that's in the middle. And he's saying, maybe if we go back to that original text that they said, so what did they say in, give us a version in sacred, native, and Greek characters. Like the native,
sacred, native, Greek.
The native is the Demotic, the sacred is the hieroglyphics and the Greek. So
is the Greek the Greek?
And the Greek is the Greek.
Right.
Yeah.
I got it.
So
that's I'm good at this.
So he's saying there's probably there is a relationship. This is like the dumbed down version of hieroglyphics, or the not fancy religious version.
Yeah, that's fair.
And they got a bit out of Chinese, obviously, which because it covers a lot of the ground, same sort of ground being ideographic. And the first thing that he noticed that was actually
if you can read Mandarin, you can read hieroglyphics. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes and no. You can.
You have to learn them both separately.
Yeah. They're not. It's not going to happen magically.
Wait a minute.
So the cool thing that he noticed was that they would put this loop around some words, a cartouche they called it, but it was like a little house, a little circle around some of the hieroglyphics. Some images. Okay. And that signified to Young that particular word was written phonetically. The reason they worked it out is because the Greek text, it talked about rulers. There's Ptolemy and Alexander. There's also Irene, which I'm just gobsmacked.
Who's that? Queen Irene?
I think she might have been daughter or something. There was a Bernice as well. And I'm just... Bernice.
Okay.
I'm just gobsmacked that Irene and Bernice made it to the Rosetta Stone. It's
also not very ancient royal sounding.
Well... Yeah, Ptolemy and Cleopatra's in there.
Yeah.
That sounds very ancient Greek.
Xerxes.
No, he's not in there.
No, but I mean those names. And then you get, and this is my wife, Irene. My daughter, Bernice.
But they did notice, okay, so there's a cartouche around, Ptolemy was one of the big ones they started working on, because you could work it out in Greek.
Yeah.
It actually was, it was a Greek name, not an ancient Egyptian name. And they thought, okay, so that's appearing the same sort of number in the hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
So let's go backwards. Let's work out Ptolemy. And so it's inside these cartouches. There's a particular set of signs that make up Ptolemy. I'll come to it in a sec. It goes square, and then arch, and then hangman's noose, and then lion, and then dildo, and then two knives, and then the last one's like a shepherd's crook, something like that.
That would have been my guess. I didn't pick the crook at the end. That's true.
And so that was a big jump, and then you could use it to work out. Okay, some of them are used to represent sounds, and that was a huge thing.
That's tricky. They're intermingled.
Yeah, and well, first off, they thought they were intermingled when you use the cartouche around it. It's like, firstly, owl's going to represent owl, but owl inside box represents Q or something like that.
Okay.
But then they found a few more of these cartouches, and they're like, okay, are they representing? Does that mean they're doing similar sorts of things or not? So they started going back, and they worked more and more of those sorts of things. Yeah. And Young actually got a couple of hieroglyphics translated into the sounds. So he did pretty well. He published it anonymously in a supplement to Encyclopedia Britannica in 1819.
What? How's that you go to?
I have figured out a bit of hieroglyphics. Where will I put it?
The back of Encyclopedia, and I don't want anyone to know I did it. Wow. I don't understand. I'm sure there is a rationale. I just don't understand what it is.
So where did he get to? He got to 200 words of the hieroglyphics.
Wow.
He did some of the Demotic as well.
Yeah.
And later on, they said, look, there was some false conclusions, but he was definitely going in the right direction. So he didn't get it all, but he got a chance.
When you're an early adopter.
Problem was, Young was not really interested in ancient Egyptian at all. He didn't really care about the Egyptian people or anything like that. He was just doing it as an intellectual puzzle, and
Sure.
and he was a polymath, so he had a bunch of other intellectual puzzles he was interested in, and he just got bored, moved on.
I can see that. I did first year linguistics, right, 2,500 years ago, and some of these
When you were
assignments-
working on hieroglyphics,
Not quite, but you'd get like, a list of written in or English language writing, whatever. I still can't remember what we call it. I should
English.
know this. No, but the word, I forgot what the alphabet's called. Anyway, our alphabet next to translation, and you have to sit there and go, okay, from these, can I work out what these other words mean? in all these sentences, and it was endlessly fascinating to do. Like that was.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah, it's
I
homework
don't
where you go, I'm gonna have a beer and do my homework because it's fun.
And I can imagine as well, like it's a huge Sudoku. Like you're like, okay,
Absolutely.
once I get lost in this, I'm just looking for this.
Yeah, you go into flow. You get totally lost.
Flow state.
Yep,
Flow
absolutely.
state.
Yep.
So, Jean-Francois Champollion was born in 23rd of December, 1790, which I think is an interesting date. I'll come to in a sec. He was the last of 7 children. He was raised in pretty humble circumstances.
Yeah.
His father, Jacques, was a book trader and notorious drunk. And his mother, Jean-Françoise, everyone has the same name in this story. They're all Jean-François or Pierre-François.
Well, it's easy to remember.
But also Pierre means that the Rosetta Stone is even called Pierre. So
What the? No. It's a conspiracy.
his mother was never around. Seems to have been largely absent. So he was raised by his older brother, Jacques Joseph.
Pierre.
Now, Jacques Joseph was definitely involved and hung out with his brother through most of his life. But he did say, okay, you need to go to school. So you go to the school of the Abbé Dussert. While there, the young Champollion, his gift for language became evident. He started out learning. Now, this is when he's at like 11 or 12. He started out learning Latin and Greek, but quickly progressed to Hebrew and other Semitic languages such as Ethiopic, Arabic, Syriac, and Chaldean.
Get down.
He took up an interest in ancient Egypt because, this was Egyptomania at the time. And also Joseph Fourier, who was in charge of writing the history of the Egyptian experience, was in the local area. So he'd seen the Rosetta Stone. And one biographer says that when Champollion was 11, Fourier invited him over to his house and showed him his collection of ancient Egyptian artifacts. And
That sounds like a euphemism hell.
It does, but Champollion doesn't seem to have been euphemed here. Anyway, Champollion was enthralled, and upon seeing the hieroglyphics and hearing they were unintelligible, this is an 11-year-old, he declared, "I will be the one to succeed in reading them."
Okay, champ.
Obviously, that was he should have little French boy, not little English boy. But
He would have said it in the French. Our Français. Oh, actually, he could have said it in 19 languages by the sound of it.
he could have done. He could have done.
In Chaldean.
When he was 14, he went to another school in Grenoble, but hated its strict curriculum because it only allowed him to study Oriental languages 1 day a week. He begged his brother to move him to a different school.
Bitches.
My Oriental schooling is so lame.
There's not enough playtime. No. There's not enough non-Oriental languages.
This dude seems to have been just all the way down there. That's all he wanted to do.
Yeah.
When he was 16, he started getting ready to go to university in Paris. Before that, he presented an essay on the geographical description of Egypt before the conquest of Cambyses to the local academy, like the local Auguste, and they admitted him when he was 16.
Because he described Egypt.
He wrote a good essay. And he got membership of the academy.
You're a fellow.
Yeah, there you go. He wrote a letter to his parents at the time.
I'm going to try that. I'm going to send an essay to the Academy of Science and go, what do you reckon?
You're not 16-year-old. You're not a precocious 16-year-old anymore who is going to do something big.
I can try.
You're going to do something big.
Don't you age shame me. I can be 16. Identify as 16.
He wrote to his parents. I want to make a profound and continuous studies of this ancient nation. The enthusiasm brought me by this study of their monuments, their power and knowledge filling me with admiration. All of this will grow further as I acquire new notions. Of all the people that I prefer, I shall say that none is important to my heart as the Egyptians.
So, 2 things. Did you say 16 now?
Yes.
So were you a late developer too?
Well, I started his voice as an 11-year-old.
No, I'm thinking 16. I want to get
none is important to my heart as the Egyptians.
I want to go and do the Egyptian thing.
He still wrote the sentence. None is is as important to my heart as the Egyptians.
Well, the French are very romantic people. They have been for ages. So he felt
So is that racist?
pull.
Is he saying I'm totally hot for the Egyptians? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's hot. He's hot for them. That's race positive.
He's very race positive.
Egyptian isn't a race.
In fact, at this point, when he moved to Paris, he started. This may be problematic in the modern age. He took up the habit of
Do go on.
he took up the habit of dressing in Arab clothing, and he changed he started calling himself Al-Sagir, which was an Arab translation of his nickname.
Jean-Pierre Alcacer.
No, he's just called Al-Sagir.
Al-Sagir.
Long story, he had a different nickname. He was called Lejeune, which is the younger. But it doesn't matter.
Not the bean.
No.
Oh, this is legume.
Lejeune.
This is legume.
But yeah, he started dressing up Arab.
Dressing Arab, calling himself Arab.
18 years old, he started to study the Rosetta Stone. Now,
Of course he did.
working independently, he was able to confirm some of the readings of the Demotic that the Swedish diplomat had made.
Yeah.
And then he started working on the hieroglyphics. According to a story that was related, but he did take quite some time. He kept going on it he started when he was 18 working on the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah.
When he was 32, he made a discovery. So
Eureka?
he's slaving here.
Holy shit.
Yeah. He guessed, similarly on the same lines as the cartouche, that a circular sign represented the sun, and then he found that in a cartouche, and that it's just a circle, and he's thinking, okay, so that works to mean Ramses, so that must be R, or sort of a re-sound. So he started working backwards from there, and he got more and more consonants. He started to get them really quite quickly at this point. Further confirmation came where the sound for M and S signs appeared at the same point where there's a word for birth. And so he's starting
Definitely has M and S in it.
He worked out the sign for ibis was in the god Thoth, so that would be the th sound or something like that. Yeah. So he started going quicker and quicker and quicker, going all through this area, and eventually, where's the story? He would. Champollion knew the Coptic words that would translate Greek text and would tell the phonetic hieroglyphics such as P and T that would fit all of the words. From there, he could guess the phonetic meanings of several more signs. By his nephew's account, upon making these discoveries, Champollion raced to his brother's office, flung down his collection of copied inscriptions, cried, "Jette mon affaire," I've done it, and collapsed in a days-long faint.
Days long. Just leave him alone. Just step over him.
He had been working on quite a long time.
14 solid years, no sleep or food.
Yeah, he published this quite quickly in this letter to Medasier.
Yeah.
He was a bit calm about what he said in this first letter, but then he published something much later.
Well, he's probably feeling weak after being unconscious for 4 days.
So he counted about 860 hieroglyphic signs, and he had worked out the phonetic characters for heaps and heaps of them. So he worked out different names, and then he worked from there to test a whole bunch of different words and different meanings.
That's cool.
And the key thing is, he also detected homophones, which is a homophone is where two words that sound the same but have different meaning. New and new.
Oh, yeah.
Have different meaning. So and a homophone only happens when you have a phonetic language, not an ideographic language.
That would make
because if you're representing Al it's a different thing if Al represents.
No, I've seen it where you get this. Oh yeah, this character means turnip, but if you say it next to the symbol for cabbage, it means elbow.
Yeah, there you go. So,
but still
not quite a homophone. But anyway,
no.
So he worked it. In 1824, he published his Précis du Système Hieroglyphique, stated hieroglyphic writing is a complex system, a script all at once figurative, symbolic, and phonetic, in one and the same text, in one and the same sentence, and I might venture, one and the same word.
No worries.
There'd be times where you'd put the word th in front of the symbol for car, and that would be a th-car, which might mean it was a really complicated script to work out.
Perfect for the priesthood and the people of power then.
As everyone said at this point, they moved from deciphering the script to translating the underlying language. Right. So at this point, you can start working on meaning, which is awesome. So
I didn't even think of that. So there'll be times I go, okay, I know what the word says. I got fuck no idea what it means.
Well, this is the thing. They then had to start working backwards. So they went to all other hieroglyphics that they could find, on the temple walls and things like that. And they'd be like, okay, so what might this context mean? What are we saying here?
This way out.
So he unlocked it, but it was a long journey from there. There was a bit of a fight between Young and Champollion about who actually discovered which bits. And
it is not a discovery if there ain't two people scragging.
Oh, no. And they got a little bit petty about it. So
imagine.
So what does the stone actually say? So the text on the stone, and they knew this quite early on, they could get this from the Greek, was a decree issued in 197 BC by Ptolemy V, granting favours to Egypt's priesthoods. Now, I'm going to read a little bit of it, but it's much longer than this. On the 24th day of the month of Gorpaios, which correspondeth to the 24th day of the 4th month of the season Pert of the inhabitants of Tamet.
So January.
Which is Egypt. Pert. I like Pert. Pert is a good name for a season. I think it's like spring.
It is like spring. There's no question.
In the 23rd year of the reign of Horus Ra the child, who hath risen as king upon the throne of his father, the lord of the shrines of Nekabet and Utachet, the mighty one of twofold strength, the stablisher of two lands, the beautifier of Egypt, whose heart is perfect or benevolent towards the gods, the Horus of gold, who maketh perfect the life of the Hamanent beings, the lord of the 30-year festivals like Ptah, the sovereign prince like Ra, the king of south and north. And here's a word that I'm just like, what the? Neteriu, Meriu, Atiu, Ayu, Setep, En Ptah, Usa, Kara, Ankh, Sekhem, Amen. The son of the sun, Ptolemy. Anyway.
So they spend a lot of time saying absolutely bloody nothing.
No, that was all just how good is the king? Oh, no, this is the king's name.
This is how you know who's saying this. And now you got 200 words left.
Then next came a whole bunch of family tree. This is where Bernice and Irene were in there somewhere.
Jesus shitting Christ. Get to the point, mate.
I know. Okay. And here's where it goes really weird. It goes really Trumpian. So this is the Trumpian bit. Inasmuch as the king who is beloved by the gods, all that again possessed a divine heart which was benevolent towards the gods, and he hath given gold in large quantities and grain in large quantities to the temple, and he hath given very many lavish gifts in order to make Tamet prosperous.
Anyway, everyone should clean their teeth.
No. Whereas, and of the taxes, some of them he hath cut off, and some of them he hath lightened. So I've lowered your taxes, dudes. Yeah. Thus causing the soldiers and those who live in the country to be prosperous under his reign. And the people of Egypt, and likewise, and everyone is Augustus, and he's let some people out of prison. And behold, the treasury shall not be made more full by contributions of the hands of priests than it was up to the first year of the reign of his majesty, his holy father. That's the key bit. This is the key bit. This is after all of that. It's, behold, the treasury shall not be made more full of contributions by the hands of the priests than it was up to the first year of the reign of his majesty, his holy father.
So setting a limit on tithes or something.
Taxes aren't going up.
Can you imagine? So this is up on every wall. And you need to read this. You're like, oh, do I?
Where is the bit? Where is the bit? And I know we tease our bureaucrats today for waffling on, but my God.
Is it underlining or highlighting or anything?
Maybe they were paid by the word. Maybe the inscriptors were paid by the word. Because all this needed to say, taxes on priests aren't going up. Like,
oh God. Also, I wonder, maybe they were coloured. We don't know. Like, they could have worn away. Maybe, this is the fancy bit about the king.
Oh, yeah.
This is the bit about what a legend is.
Highlights.
Yeah, maybe they're painted. I'll probably find out they were. Like, dinosaurs are suddenly birds.
I get it. Oh, it's all of the Roman statues. They all look classically marbly.
But actually, they coloured in the pubes.
And they were...
You didn't know that? Just the pubes.
Yeah? Just the pubes. This one's a redhead pube.
Yeah, we know Cleopatra and Julius Caesar were blonde.
Seems like there's about at least 40 writing systems that we've got examples of that haven't been deciphered. There could well be more. This was the count that I could find just then.
In general or in the Egyptian area?
No, in general, in the world. Yeah. Now, some of them it's because that we only get tiny fragments.
Yeah.
Others it's because there's no language descendant. Like we've got an example, but it's like I can't see any connection with anything we know.
Cul-de-sac.
Doesn't mean they won't be. There's others that have been worked out recently or further back.
Yeah.
So what are some examples? There's Linear A, Cretan hieroglyphics, the Wadi El Hol script. But here's three that I like. So the language of the Singapore stone. There was once a giant engraved slab of sandstone at the mouth of the Singapore River. It had been there for 700 years. Or so when in 1819, workers uncovered it while clearing away jungles. A few scholars got to have a look at it before it was blown to bits in order to make space for a fort to protect the British settlements.
Oh, God.
The parts that didn't end up in the river were eventually used for road gravel,
Yep.
though some fragments were saved. The script hasn't been deciphered, but there have been various suggestions. It could be ancient Ceylonese, Tamil, Kawi, old...
I hear stories like that, like, I feel physical pain. Like, it makes my stomach hurt when I hear that. Like, why is your go-to destroy the damn thing?
I know. You got to be able to write. Just.
I don't know what this is. I'm going to fuck with it. Like, what the... Why? Why blow it? Anyway.
The stove inscription. In 1828, a group of woodcutters found some markings carved into a Bulgarian cliffside.
So they did a shit and threw it in the ocean, right? That was like, screw this.
No, it's a different story this time.
Is it?
They thought the marks indicated hidden treasure, but none was found. Word got around, and soon some archaeologists had a look. Later, the head of the archaeological expedition was executed for being a secret agent for the Soviets in Bulgaria.
Oops.
One piece of evidence used against him was a strange coded message he'd sent to Kiev. Basically, he'd copied the cliffside inscription, and people thought he was a spy. So they killed him.
But they kept the original artifact.
The original is still...
Okay.
It's not clear. It could be Thracian, Celtic, Sarmato-Alanian, or Slavic. Other people say it's just a natural rock formation. It's not even writing.
Oh, it's like the face on Mars.
The cool one that I like at the moment, it's the Kipu. So for a long time, people thought that the Incas had no writing system. And which is weird because
they had a lot of other stuff.
They had a lot of other stuff.
A lot of
the Incas are
matters.
very organized. Like they were a big empire, did a lot of building work.
Ate a lot of hearts, or pulled them out.
The bit of writing that their writing system. So what they've known is the Kipu strings that have knots in them. So you have one string and then tied to them is a whole bunch of other shorter strings that have knots at particular places. Now, originally,
as a writing system?
Well, here's the thing. It's still being deciphered. And this is a really tricky one. It just looks so awesome. The earliest thought was, okay, it's like an abacus. You know, it's a counting system. You can imagine, okay, a certain length represents a certain counting, but it seems like it's actually deeper than that. And it's suggesting they might code stories, myths, songs, all sorts of things like that. I know. It's just so cool.
Macrame writing.
So I love that. I love ancient writing. It's just...
that stinks also if only certain people are allowed to know what this means. Because, come on, it would take you infinity years to learn it.
This is the interesting thing. That there a lot of the people that mastered the complicated ideographic hieroglyphic type scripts are like, no, we don't want to get the Greek scripts. Then everyone can do it. We want to keep the special knowledge for us.
Of course. That's why you get so many millionaire linguists these days, because they know the special language words.
There you go, listener. So if you want to find your own language to translate, you can do that. There are some out there, and that would be an awesome achievement.
You've already done the Black Belt Master Sudoku book, so now it's time to try your hand at Thracian.
Or you could be like Scorpion the First and have your own language. Make your own up.
Just don't change your name before I do.
In which you become Scorpion the Second.
That's me. I am a Scorpio, therefore I must be Scorpion too.
Scorpion the Second.
I have no choice. It's bigger than me. I have no choice.
I think Vin Diesel is Scorpion too. Like, it sounds like that's...
No. He doesn't have enough hair.
A Wholesome Show is me, Will Grant, him, Rod Lamberts. Scorpion the First and Second.
Just the second's fine.
And brought to you by the Australian National Centre for the Public Awareness of Rulers Named Scorpion.
Yes.
See you soon, listener.